Some cases fade with time. Others only grow more haunting. The Evelyn Dick case remains one of Canada's most compelling and controversial true crime mysteries. With new insight, deeper research, and special guest Sarah Farr, we take another look at the woman, the murder, and the questions that still remain. Tonight, we reopen the file. So Rich, today we are back again discussing one of Canada's most profound cases, the Evelyn Dick case. And today we have a very special guest with us.
Yes, we do. This is going to be fun today. We have, 2 weeks ago, we did a prequel to this and gave a synopsis of what we had researched on the Evelyn Dick case. And in the 2 weeks since, a lot more information has been discovered by myself and you. And today we have a special guest in Canada.
Yes.
Who's on the scene.
Absolutely.
And it is Sarah Farr.
Sarah, I want to welcome you to the TSR podcast. How
Hello.
are you doing? And thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning to Zoom in with us.
Hey, this is a real treat to get to speak to people. Yeah, I love what you're doing with this podcast.
Yeah, we were recommended you by someone from I think it was a cultural historical council. I might be getting the name wrong, but I've heard that you gave a fantastic presentation there about the case, and they recommended you. So I was happy to reach out.
Thank you. It was a fellow called Cam Brandreth who is involved with the Ancaster Heritage Township Society.
Yes.
And so it's a real treat to go and speak to. I've been asked to go and speak to some historical societies and groups and things around the area, which has been amazing. I never foresee myself doing this kind of thing. So as a lot of other people that you've interviewed, it seems to be that we all got into this quite by accident. But
yes. Myself as well, everybody kind of knows the foundation of how the podcast started. So it was sort of kind of just, we were thrown into it. But so starting off with Evelyn Dick, I really wanted to know how you got introduced to the case, and what was your first interpretation of the story and like the background info, if you could just kind of outline that.
Sure. Well, I didn't grow up in Hamilton. I arrived here in 2005, and I was born in England and have been living in Australia. And when I came to Hamilton, it was quite a culture shock for me. There was a lot of it's a very interesting place to live, I would say. And it has an awful lot of history, interesting things. And I had actually picked up, I was trying to kind of get acquainted with my new city and looking for just stories about it. And I actually picked up a book at a secondhand bookstore, which was called Blue Moon. And it was a fictional account of Evelyn. And I had never heard of her. And I kind of turned this book over and I was reading about torso murder, 1946, Hamilton, Ontario. So I took it home and I really enjoyed it, but I didn't think too much on it at that point in time. It was, an interesting story. But then things would just keep coming up. And when I was reading the book as well, I noticed that a lot of the locations involved in the story were kind of close to where I was living at that time. And it helped me kind of get acquainted. It was talking about the Royal Connaught Hotel, which is a staple in downtown Hamilton. And it was a good way of getting to know the case. And then, so of course, the story itself, a woman called Evelyn, who was 25 at the time of the actual, when she got married to this gentleman. And he was found basically dismembered on the escarpment here. And I thought that was quite an odd thing. And, I looked around online and found all these other different kind of stories, but everyone just seems to be kind of like saying, well, yes, she must be guilty. But I just thought, well, this is a very odd crime. For instance, what are the instances of a woman dismembering? I mean, it happens, but, it's a very unusual crime. And anyway, I just over the years, I started reading there was 2 other books that have been written about her. And I read those and I just wasn't quite satisfied with everything I read. And so started off on my own journey.
So last week we did like a rough breakdown of the overview of the case, and we tried to hit all the major talking points. And there's some points that we left out that I am going to ask you about later on today.
Okay.
And I was kind of wondering, how do you, for everybody who watched last week's episode or 2 weeks ago's episode, how do you perceive the case, and what narrative do you follow?
Well, first off, one thing that really has to be taken into consideration is Hamilton, Ontario itself, because for people who have not been here, or, it's a hard thing to kind of fathom. It's had a very long history with organized crime. Part of that is basically the fact of where it is located. It's close to numerous US borders, and it's been kind of a hub between Toronto, Montreal, and getting things across the border. Of course, when we go back to Prohibition times, the waterways made things very easy as well. So especially during that time, things got very interesting. So first off, Hamilton has this well-known history with organized crime. Evelyn, when she was giving her accounts of what happened, had brought up a gang from Windsor, who she said had been hired to take out her husband. And I just found it a little odd that it would be kind of like just brushed off. Oh, don't be ridiculous. I mean, as we'll go through, we'll see there was kind of evidence that led police to believe that she had been involved, and her home, for one place, was somewhere where they found a lot of different evidence. But I just thought it was a little odd, and that maybe we needed to look at it slightly differently.
So, Rich, I got one more question before I hand it over to you. And it's, how would you describe Evelyn? If you could just characterize her in some way, shape, or form, a couple of sentences, what kind of person is she? And then we'll dive into the case itself, just for anybody who may have not seen the previous episode.
Yeah, so, obviously without speaking to her myself, I can deduce what I have gathered. I will start off by saying that during the trial for the baby's death, there was a psychiatrist who had interviewed her, and he was brought in to give his own kind of, his determination of her. And he said that the only time she cried, and she cried just like a baby, was when she talked about her early life and her childhood and growing up. And he said that was the only thing that seemed to actually evoke an emotional response from her. And he said something interesting in that there was a lot of disruption, and he used the term threatenings at times. Now, he didn't say whether the threatenings were to Evelyn herself or to the mother, but we know there was a lot of distortion going on in that relationship. So Evelyn herself, I think, would have always been a I want to please person. So I think she would have been looking to always appease her parents in as, is it my fault that they're arguing? Have I started another argument? What is the psychological kind of intake of all this? And then as she grew older and became attractive, and also had the money and the means to do herself up to the nines, I was walking the dog this morning, and I was thinking, I wonder if she and I would have got on, because I'm not a do myself up to the nines kind of girl, I have a horse, I'm out doing barn chores, like I can never imagine her doing that kind of stuff. But I'm certainly intrigued. I've always been slightly more sympathetic to the story, because I wanted, part of the reason I wanted to keep going with this and write a book, and then I can move away from it, but is because really I want to explore that, the sides, the angles which may have influenced her as she grew up. And as an adult, she was attractive. She was probably I imagine she had quite a good sense of humor, if she could kind of keep up with these sorts of people and entertain them. But how she ended up with a dead husband is something we'll have to try to figure out.
Rich, you're up.
Yeah, what kind of confused me in my research on this case was the character Russell McLean.
Donald
McLean. Now, see, there's something I learned already. Who was listed as her father, but he was not her father. He wasn't really even her stepfather. Is that true?
That can't be proven. I mean, I've only kind of looked at it as far as, do they have any physical resemblance? And I don't see any physical resemblance there. But there was nothing which has absolutely proven that he wasn't her father. It was when I went up to look at my first stop on my serious research journey was after I'd read the Brian Lee book, which is The Untold Story of Evelyn Dick. That was published in like 2001. And after reading that was when I read the book, and I just had a lot of underlined things and had lots of questions. So I went up to look at his research, which was up in Sault Ste. Marie, up here in Ontario. And I saw a little note which said Donald McLean, not the father, but there was nothing to substantiate it. That could have been the case, yeah, but we don't have any proof. But Mrs. McLean said that she was married in Scotland before she came to Canada, 1911. Yes, but she didn't say who she got married to.
Okay.
You mentioned your research. What did your research patterns look like? How did you approach the case? Did you approach it with really no knowledge, but maybe had watched like a documentary or something that interested you? How did you start the research process?
Well, I started off reading like what was available to me. We have a lovely local newspaper called the Hamilton Spectator, and in 2016, that was to commemorate the 70th anniversary. Mark McNeil, who's a reporter with the Spectator, had done a wonderful feature spread on her. So it was a like a cover story and everything, and that was very interesting. So that pulled me in, and then everyone wants to talk about it. You find if somebody posts something about Evelyn on Facebook, in the local groups at least, like everybody, or even like a location that's related to her, someone will say that's where Evelyn was incarcerated, or Evelyn lived near there, or and everybody has a story, because Hamilton isn't that huge. Back in 1946, the population was 178,000, and I think it went up to, it was 215, something like that, and including the men still enlisted. So like that kind of also gives an idea of how the city was impacted by the war, as well as people being away. So yeah, sorry, go back to your question again. I can get off topic.
No, I was just wondering about your research and steps you had taken to
so I started off by reading all his research, and that was where I got all the trial transcripts from. And so like laboriously going through all of those. But then really speaking to people. For instance, Evelyn's family. I was very interested in like the physical aspects of things. You know, you can look at paper all you like, but I was very lucky to be invited into 214 Roslyn Avenue South, which was where Evelyn had grown up. And to sit there in the same walls, it was quite a strange feeling. But you know, it was just an ordinary, comfortable home, except for the falls, of course, because the owner at that time had experienced her mother had fallen, and her husband had fallen as well. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady. She passed away just a few years ago, but I am forever indebted to her. Barbara Harding is her name.
Sure. Rich?
Yeah, we take a look at cases, and we often compare cases.
Yeah.
And in comparing, one of the cases that we talk about because of the book that I wrote about the Lizzie Borden case, and in comparing Lizzie Borden, she was acquitted, and it seemed like the reason that she was acquitted because of where she was in her community, her status in community, and people did not believe that a woman could brutally murder her father and her stepmother. But in Evelyn's case, it was almost that she was found guilty that first trial by her morality. And is that what you discovered in as you progressed through your research?
Well, I mean, she didn't have a great, there was a lot of, like, with finding ashes in the alley, of course. And one of the big things that really damned her was her mother's testimony. Really, if when you take into account everything that was in evidence against Evelyn, a lot of it was circumstantial evidence, and a lot of it was through what her mother said on the witness stand. And one of the items listed during the appeal was that, Evelyn had said that her mother had been asked to testify against her in order so that she wouldn't get prosecuted herself. There was a lot of things. I mean, she was interviewed by Detective Clarence Preston as well, who it turned out had known the family in some capacity. And quite frankly, she gave these differing statements which confused police. I mean, they've confused me a lot of times as well. But there are some points which are incurring with each. What is the word? Occurring, sorry, in each of her statements. Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could sort of break down how you believe this whole crime played out. Do you believe that Evelyn committed these murders? Do you believe it was the father? It was a combination of the two of them, or it was outside help? What is your theory on this case?
Her father was involved, in my opinion. I also think her mother was complicit to a certain degree, which is one of the things I am getting into in my writing. I'm not completely discounting the organized crime element either. Because when I really go back and study it, and we're so lucky now because we have all these archived newspapers and everything at our fingertips. So you can also kind of just Google and find all this wonderful information, which does tend to kind of back up some of the things that she was saying. For instance, there's 4 primary statements that she gave. It begins with the gangsters from Windsor. And then one thing you fellas didn't touch on last week is the fella called Bill Bahozuk, who was also accused. And he was a romantic liaison with Evelyn, but they were also working together.
He was the Olympic rower. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah. Well, he would have been the Olympic rower, but unfortunately with his dalliances with Evelyn, he was at the trials, so he was not able to go and compete. That would have, I'm sure that must have hit quite hard for him. Yeah, he was heavyweight rower.
So do you think the mob had something to do with this? What was the mob's role?
One of the things that keeps coming up is that John didn't have as much money as he had made out he was going to have. But he was always asking Mrs. McLean and Evelyn for money. And he was always short of his $75 bond money for the HSR. Now, you touched on this last week. He was one of the streetcar conductors for the Hamilton Street Railway. Each of those conductors would carry with them every day $75 bond money. And it was through this bond money that they would purchase tickets, they'd sell the tickets throughout the day, the money would be replenished. He was always short of this bond money. So where was the money going? Is something that I have been quite interested in. You got to remember, again, gambling and things like this was something that was very prominent, and behind gambling were these mob influences, for sure, absolutely. Like I can't like really kind of explain to people who don't understand Hamilton that like there is this mentality of you keep your mouth shut. It's something I'd never experienced before in England or even in Australia. It was just like, you keep your mouth shut. And Evelyn, I think, was also keeping her mouth shut for the mob in some ways. Donald McLean had all this money and all the streetcar tickets. Was it all part of the stealing from the HSR, or was it like part of something bigger? It's something that I've really questioned. Was it like a holding house there? Like, and had John seen something he shouldn't have done? That's the key thing. Had John seen something that he shouldn't have done? And that was, I've been able to speak to some relatives of Dick's brother-in-law. These are the people who, of course, had been able to identify John and down at the morgue. And they seem to also think that it must have been, he'd seen something that he shouldn't have done. They said he was a quiet farmer. Why would he get into trouble? But yeah, the fact that he was always short on money, and then he gets a series of phone calls as well, which is interesting.
Phone calls. Could you elaborate on that?
Phone calls to the house. So I love this part.
Tell me all about it. I want to hear it.
It's Alexandra McLean's testimony, the mother again. She describes John Dick getting a phone call, and he goes, and he came back to the table and he was shaking like a leaf shaking, is how she describes it, to the point that he couldn't pick up his knife and his fork. And Evelyn said that the person on the phone was Bill Bohozek. But Bill Bohozek has never been like he's been threatening in some ways, but I don't believe he was responsible for murdering John Dick. I do believe he may have been responsible for helping with disposal of the body, but I don't think he did anything like that.
So Bill Bohozek, we talked about him just a few minutes ago, the would-be Olympic rower, possibly being complicit in these murders.
Well, he may have received a phone call from Evelyn to assist with disposal. But I don't think he actually shot him himself. That was one of the the last statement that Evelyn gave. She said that Bill had been given a gun from her father to shoot John Dick, and that they went for a ride up on the mountain. Evelyn describes things in a lot of detail. I do think she was present when it happened. I don't know how much control over everything she had.
Rich.
Interesting.
It's a very confusing story, isn't it? So yeah, I know.
And that's what makes it so compelling, is the confusion of the facts.
Because there's so much lies and deceit within the story that we're trying to find out the truth behind them, but then they're all tied to other stuff that we're trying to unravel this big ball of yarn here.
Yeah.
Mike, I have a question. If this crime happened today, do you think that it would be solved and there wouldn't be the history of mystery that we have with Evelyn and her second life, which we haven't discussed yet? But do you think that the crime would be solved quickly under today's forensics and DNA?
100%. Yeah, 100%. There would not be any of this mystery. The whole process would have been dealt with differently. And police would have had a lot more resources that they don't have today, There would have been a lot of things that they would have been able to figure out much easier. Forensics as well. I mean, they knew that a gun had been fired down in the McLean home, 214 Rosslyn Avenue South. They found bullet holes down there, but they didn't mention finding any amount of blood down there. So it's possible he could have just been shooting the gun off downstairs. Maybe he was just testing it or whatever. But there's nothing. He could have been shooting at a rat down there. Who knows? Who knows really? But that gun was deemed to have been fired. Donald McLean's gun was deemed to have been fired shortly before being examined by police. And a gun owned by Bill Bohozek was found not to have been fired recently. Yeah.
So John Dick had been shot twice in the torso, from what they had deemed from the examination of the torso once it was found. Was there ever a certainty in it being a .32 caliber round, matching the .32 revolver?
I think that was, well, they didn't find any bullets in or around the body, but they just found the ones in McLean's basement, and ones that hadn't been fired as well, but they didn't find any around the body.
Did the police ever sort of suggest what caliber might have shot John? Because there's a huge difference between like a .22, which is like the size of like a pinky nail, or something like a .308, or
I'm not a ballistics girl whatsoever, but all I've seen mentioned throughout the transcripts of what they found was 0.32.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rich?
Yes. The first trial.
Okay.
A media circus. And we've seen our share of media circuses when it comes to a trial. Evelyn was, as my research indicates, was convicted, and they had even had a date of execution for her. And it wasn't much time between her conviction and when they were going to execute. It was a matter of months.
Yeah.
And somebody else stepped in, an attorney.
Yeah.
How prominent of an attorney was he, and or did his prominence result as of working and trying to overturn Evelyn's first trial?
Rich, I feel like you're taking the questions right out of my notebook.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
So John J. Robinette, he hadn't been working. He wasn't really a criminal lawyer at that point. He'd done a few different things, but definitely it was part of his journey. In any books that are written about him, that obviously always has kind of a big section. But I think he would have been an outstanding lawyer, regardless of this case.
Could you touch on the bone fragments?
Yeah, sure. So, carry on.
Sorry, were they like, I didn't see any images of the bone fragments online when I was doing my research. So I don't know how large they were in size. Were they confirmed to be human bones and not animal bones? Like, what depth of research has been done on the actual bone fragments themselves? Because that's a huge part of this theory. Oh,
yeah, of course. Well, there was human teeth found as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, it wasn't like large chunks of bones. It was smaller fragments. Yeah, I don't believe in that. Yeah, so they just very small, but they were forensically examined and determined to be a human. Yes. Yes.
What type of forensics were done on the child in the suitcase?
That
was a question that came through on our live premiere of the video just a few weeks ago. Someone, I forget who it was, had asked if there was a examination of the body, and they mentioned the fact that if there was an examination of the body of the child, they could have deemed it being a stillborn through the fact whether or not the lungs had been inflated upon taking breaths. So I was curious to hear your thoughts of that. And whoever asked that question, I'm sorry. I wish I had jotted down.
Might have been Faye.
It could very possibly have been Faye.
Yep.
She asks a lot of great questions.
Oh, yeah. I actually wrote down something that Faye wrote. She wrote down she was a busy little thing posing for pictures.
Yes. I was reviewing the comments today and I saw that and I sort of chuckled. I was like, ha, ha, ha.
It's poetic. I love it. I love it. So, okay, the baby was definitely alive. She actually spent 10 days in hospital with the baby after Peter David White was born. So very much alive. Yeah, as you know, she had 3 children that we are aware of. and then the stillborn, and then Peter David White in September of 1944. So he was definitely very much alive, as I have said. 10 days in hospital where she apparently cared for him, made preparations for doctor's visits, which she never showed up for afterwards, getting rid of the cat as he tries to eat the cord. So it was definitely a healthy baby. So what happened after leaving the hospital is the real point of contention. Evelyn said that she got a cab down to the Royal Connaught Hotel in Hamilton, and that she handed this baby off to Bill Bohozek, who she said was the father. Bill definitely disputed all of this. I'm not sure if he was the father or not. They had sexual relations, obviously. Yeah, so yes, to answer the question, it was definitely alive. The baby had been circumcised prior to her leaving the hospital, but was found with a string around its neck, and it had been put into a little leatherette zippered shopping bag. They described it as the baby being doubled over so as to fit, and then put into this suitcase and the cardboard box with cement on top. There was a matchbook from a hotel inside the cement. That's something that's not really talked about much. They didn't identify in the trial transcript which hotel it was from. But then how that, who killed the baby, who put it into the suitcase and all this kind of stuff, we don't know, but it was taken with her when she left, when she moved into Carrick Avenue, obviously, because she didn't move in there until like over a year later.
So why is it such a common statement that it could have been a stillborn or something like that?
I think that's just because you guys didn't get enough time to research it then. Oh, and because there was a stillborn. The second baby was a stillborn. But yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but Peter David White definitely was born alive.
To me, the fact with the shoelace around the neck of the baby doesn't seem like a characteristic of Evelyn. I have a hard time believing someone that got all dressed up and whatever and did that whole thing and wanted the luxury of life would do something so horrific. If she did do it and it was her, what characteristics does that give her? What does that tell us about her? And does that, I guess, open up the door to conversation that it was 100% her who killed John? Or how do you feel about that?
I don't think that she killed the baby herself. It was shortly after that she'd given birth and returned back to 214 Roslyn Avenue that she signed a lease on another apartment. My feeling is that it was either Alexandra or Donald. Donald certainly didn't want another child in the house. And again, when I mentioned the mother here, like I feel like there hasn't been enough attention on her. I think everyone's looked at Donald. He was a bit of a nightmare for sure. But Alexandra also had her own demons, and she was as much in trying to influence Evelyn as anyone else. He had made the statement that he didn't want another child in the house. Obviously, this was another illegitimate child as well, and there would have been a lot of stigma around that. But I can't put myself in the place of somebody back then. And one thing that I also wanted to mention because she had she brought up this married name, saying that the husband was Norman White, and she'd put that name onto the birth certificate and everything. But one thing that's not mentioned is that back in that era, if you weren't married, the CAS, the Children's Aid Society, could come in and take that baby because you were unfit to take the baby. So, in defense of her, by creating that fictitious husband, she ensured that the baby could come home with her, which is another reason, which is why I think it would be very odd that she would go to all this trouble and to then take the life of the child. Wow. She had said that she gave it to Bill Bohozek and he was going to look after it. So if she wasn't really giving it to Bill Bohozek, perhaps she had substituted him for the parents. Yeah. But Mrs. McLean said that the baby just never came home. That was her theory. I have one other little detail that in the book where I think there is more implication that it did go back to 214. But yeah, that's for the book.
Rich?
The media coverage of this trials.
Yeah.
We saw pictures of the line of gawkers that wanted to get in to see the proceedings, and was it that much of a media circus as it appears that we see here and what we observe?
Yeah, you can check out my background. This is one of the photos of everybody, and I just love all the expressions on people's faces. They, there's some. It's very much like Hamilton today loves a good story. So and again, just after the war, these people were like looking for something lighter. Could you believe it? But this was before social media, so this was like they were all coming down to see what's going on. It was huge. And the story, ran all across the world. People, this torso found, woman accused. Yeah. So
a viewer that always comes and joins us for the coffee hour and for the live premieres almost on a weekly basis now. I see this viewer all the time. Her name's Abby, and she had mentioned that she wanted to ask you a question. Because I put in the premiere, I said, hey, if you guys have any questions for Sarah, just put them down below. And I have a question, and she was wondering what the relationship was with the father, the relationship between Evelyn and basically Dad. And how much of this murder about John do you think she knew, and how much of it was she involved in? Did she ask him to do it?
Did she ask him to do it? I don't think she asked him to do it. I think there was a lot of John and her father worked together. He'd been there for like 20 years and John had been there for just a few. So obviously he had a lot of seniority there, and everybody knew Donald McLean. John, I think, was, again, there was this weird thing about the money. He was being sued by another lady as well because he also owed her money. He borrowed some money and then he hadn't paid it back. This would have definitely created a huge rift with Donald McLean, who was so very controlling, I think, of Alexandra and his daughter. One of the things she talked about last week was them leaving, Donald McLean being kicked out, but it wasn't actually Donald McLean who was kicked out. It was Alexandra and Evelyn who would leave. And apparently they'd left, like, I remember reading somewhere like 7 or 8 times. So it was numerous times that they had left, which kind of gives an indication of what must have been going on for them to be leaving that amount of time. When they left and moved to, they got this apartment shortly after giving birth to Peter David White. That was them getting away. They didn't tell Donald McLean when they left where they had gone to. He didn't have an address for them. So he got very angry and was, he got a co-worker to go and spy on them and these kind of things. So he obviously had a huge temper. But I still think there was something further to this, to actually deciding to end John. because, you know, you can get rid of people, but like if he hadn't ever killed anybody before, why would he suddenly be wanting to kill John? I don't know. I think, yeah, he definitely had more to do with it. I don't think Evelyn asked him to. I think if Evelyn may have been too scared to do anything.
Yeah. I kind of get that impression from her, and based off the stuff that I've seen. She just doesn't seem like the person that wants to really get her hands dirty. It might stain the fur coat.
It might stain the fur coat, yeah.
Rich.
Yeah, in all your research, is there anything that surprised you, that was a fact that you feel like you might have been the one that discovered that fact about this case?
Well, maybe just that Evelyn wasn't completely stupid. You know, I've seen, like, she was said to have the mental age of like a
13-year-old.
Yeah. And I thought, okay, so when I see a sample of her writing, and there's this beautiful penned letter which she had sent from after she had been sentenced to hang, and she was trying to get this appeal and money for her lawyer and things like this, and it's written beautifully. Her handwriting is gorgeous. Like, she's very eloquent. She's certainly not stupid. And I found it kind of frustrating that she's been kind of pushed. Again, that was the media. And I know that you were talking as well, the Black Dahlia case, the same kind of thing, like you're shamed, slut shamed, that kind of thing. Also, one other thing that I really want to clear up is the fact that there's been reports that she slept with 150 men.
Yeah, I was just about to ask about the Black Book, and one who logs all that stuff. Was it an address book? You know, like all the relationships that I've had in my life, I don't have a secret notebook, and I don't jot them down and describe it. You know, I feel like that's like crazy.
But you probably have a contact group, and like you save your email addresses, things like that, people that you know. Evelyn. Yeah, I haven't actually seen any reference in the trial transcripts to this Black Book, but I've spoken to people who swear that it exists and maybe still exists somewhere, but it's really not known too much. Yeah, so the names of all these people were written down, but like I want to get back to this 150 men, because it's been reported that she slept with 150 men and willingly admitted it. Now, during the trial for the baby, there was a voir dire section. So that's where, of course, the jury must exit, and there's only a few people in the room. And so all these statements and where this originated, the 150 men rumor, comes from this section where there was not many people there. And so the story got kind of told repeatedly. And now it can be accessed in the trial transcripts. And I can say for absolute certainty, nowhere does she mention sleeping with 150 men. And it starts off with, you know, she has slept with some people. I'm not going to say she hasn't slept with anyone. She does say the judge's son, for one. This was like, how many people have you been intimate with? But then they say to her, you've been running around with various men since you were 15 years old. Is that right? And she says, I beg your pardon, I have not. At no point does she start saying, yes, I've slept. You've slept with, and then she's saying, how many have you been intimate with? Just a few is what she says. Just a few. So if anything, that's one of the things that I really want to dispel. She did not sleep with 150 men, and it continues to get brought up in podcasts now. I had written to another podcast, and they mentioned that, and I said, where did you get this from? Because they said they got it from the trial transcripts, and they'd got it from a newspaper article. And I said, listen, stop it. So please, no more podcasts with 150 men.
I must confess, we did mention it last week, so I apologize.
We did.
I don't know if you did. I think you mentioned the Black Book. I don't know if you said 150 men. I don't know if you did. But anyway, regardless, we've cleared that up. That's what we're here for.
Rich. You've been progressing, you said, on a book. How is it coming? What do you think? Do you have a projected time? And I know in writing the book, researching it is the hardest part of the job and takes the most time. How's it coming?
It's coming very well. It has been like just processing all her different statements has been really taxing. And like you said, the research part has taken forever. And now I'm just focused on writing every day and getting the story done. I want to get it done by the fall. I think that would be nice. The trial and everything went down in October of 1946. So I think to kind of coincide with that would be lovely. And, I think it's also good for mental health to move on to other things sometimes. There's cases that, such as like a local case here, Marion Schuett, Schuett, who disappeared in 1967, abducted from outside her school. I want to be able to write something to commemorate that, not a full book, but another article, and bring attention to that, because she's still not found. So
I want to ask a question about Evelyn's, later years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any information on what happened to her after she got, put into basically like witness protection and her file got sealed? Do you have any information on where she went, who she became?
There's nothing saying that she went into witness protection, but it's interesting you brought it up because that is a theory of mine. I noticed when I read the last book by Barton DeLee that he was writing his book to a deadline. It was coinciding with the release of a documentary, and he wanted to find Evelyn so badly that I feel that he missed all the beautiful broken pieces of this story. So I have not fixated on trying to find Evelyn. So she had family members. She had a daughter who, there are relatives out there. But I don't think even they possibly know the full story themselves. And it must have been incredibly hard to survive and keep that under wraps and not have to be pressured on it. If ever they wanted to speak to me, I would love to hear their side of the story, but I try not to push it. So there was rumor that she went out west. There was rumor that she went to London, Ontario, Kitchen-Waterloo. I've heard Whitby. I've heard a lot of different places. And my feeling is that she has probably moved to a lot of these places over the years. I think, and when I will touch on in the book, I think that she did end up somewhere around the London area. I've heard that from a few different sources now. And she may have even come back to Hamilton on occasion. I think her curiosity would have brought her back here as well. But I don't think she had a perfect life, which has been previously reported. I'm not.
Rich, your thing's going off.
Nope.
I heard some beeping. It was like a loud beeping.
Nope.
No? Oh.
Sorry.
No, I don't know what that was then.
Oh, I didn't
It
hear
was Evelyn saying, "You're not allowed to know."
Is it your blood? Is it blood sugar?
I'm sorry?
Is it your blood sugar? That's what it sounded like. It sounded like that.
Oh, really?
That
my blood sugar monitor?
That's what it sounded like.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I can check that later. I feel fine.
Okay, good. All right,
And
awesome.
you have M&Ms just in case.
Yeah, I heard something going off, and I was like, "What is that?"
If it was a beep, 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 that could have very.
It was like beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, that's
beep,
it.
beep, beep.
That's it.
Okay, all right, awesome.
We'll edit that out.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No, totally. So yeah, my feeling is that she had probably moved to a few different places. So she was incarcerated at the Kingston Prison for Women. And the most logical thing from leaving there is that she would have got a train heading east, I would think. Heading west, sorry. Yes, west. But where west? Is Western Canada, or is it Western Ontario? That's the thing. But yeah, I don't know. She certainly wouldn't be alive now. But there's nothing definitive on that. I did speak to one person who did claim to have her name, but couldn't legally tell me. So fair enough.
What was the relationship like with her daughter? You had mentioned that she had a relationship with her daughter. What did that look like?
Yeah. So little Heather, no, Heather Marie White was her name, but she used the name Marie as she got older. So just through my conversations with people, I was able to speak to a lady who did claim to have known her daughter, and she knew her as Marie as a teenager, and said that she was a lovely woman, like really had no clue on what was going on with her mother, was brought up, raised by her grandmother, and was she had a child young, she married young, but went on to live a normal as could be life. For a child growing up in that environment where there was no real certainty, it would have been quite chaotic and scary. One of the things Mrs. McLean had said about her daughter was that Evelyn loved cleaning. She loved cleaning from the childhood up. And now, when you think about people who really have a fastidious need to clean, it's also known as OCD. It can be, these kind of controlling things, which are also used to calm. In her one newspaper article, she described Evelyn. She was cleaning the stairs the day the police came from. These wonderful newspaper articles from that time, if I may mention. My favorite writer being a woman called Evelyn Dick, whose descriptive articles from that time of understanding like a squeaky shoe in the courtroom or a heater letting off a bit of steam, it really brings to the reader and myself this kind of feeling of like being right there. So her writing has definitely been an inspiration for me.
What role did the media play? Because we've done extensive work on the Black Dahlia case. We've done extensive work on the Lizzie case. And in those two cases, primarily, the media had a large role in this production and or in the case itself, whether it be spreading misinformation or facts. What role did the media have with Evelyn?
I think still to this day, misinformation has been a problem. But back then, there was a lot of talk about how much weight she'd put on during the trials and how she was quite fat. An article described her that I just read recently described her as being hog fat. It's just it was like they just put so much attention on these things which really won't get attention now. In fact, scholar Alison Jacques, who had been at the Western University in London, wrote a series of essays on the media's portrayal of Evelyn. And some of it is available online, and the rest of it is actually down there at the University in London. So that had definitely had a negative effect. The sensationalism of this case, the fact that she had these babies and out of wedlock, she'd made up these married names, that she was sleeping with so-and-so or doing this and doing that. I mean, people love that stuff, don't they? So, it made a lot of fodder for the newspapers, which has continued. But also, I had one person reach out to say that, he had randomly met Evelyn in a comic store, actually, and that she had said, I used to be in the newspapers a lot. So it was almost like she had this kind of like, she liked having her photo taken. I think there was a real kind of juxtaposition with her one side of wanting that attention. I think she was very attention hungry, but not expecting the negativity that was going to come. I think she went into these trials very naive. There's one picture of her which she's standing with Detective Clarence Preston. She's looking up at him, and people have said, oh, she was kind of like, trying to fawn over him and stuff like that. I just see her being hopeful. That's what I see when she's looking up at him. I see hope, and she can't possibly think that she's going to get left holding the bag, as she put it herself, for this murder. So naive.
Yeah. Well, Rich.
This is really an interesting, the whole case is confusing and intriguing.
Sure, absolutely.
And we've discovered a lot. I can't wait till the book comes out, and hope that Sarah can come back just before the book is released.
Yeah,
and
I would love
another primer on
to get a copy
on what's going on, because we really want to hear more about this, and we'd like to hear her conclusion to the book and what is going to be coming along the line.
Sure. Sarah, I just have a couple of quick questions. If you had the opportunity to sit down and have a coffee with Evelyn, what would you ask her?
I would be interested to know how her time in prison shaped her. How she survived after all of this, and I would love to know more about the relationship with her mother.
Yeah,
I think I would like to hear that from her. How was it to grow up with Alexandra? What did she know about her? And I'd love to hear that from her daughter's perspective as well. Like, how have they coped? Why have they had to hide? Why have they? Because nobody's come forward and said, "Hey, yeah, no, that was my great aunt, or my mother, or whatever." Why has there been this secrecy? Yeah.
Was the blood on the Packard John's?
I think it must have been whatever way the blood got there. That blood would have been John's. We know for a fact, there are certain facts that we know. We know for a fact that on March 6th, 1946, the last day John was seen alive, Evelyn had borrowed this black Packard car. In whatever version of her story, the car is involved in some manner, either like with him actually being in it and going for this drive, or of his body being put into it afterwards and then being driven to be disposed of. So it was definitely in that car, and it was seen trying to get into. Evelyn was seen trying to park the car into the garage at the back of 32 Carrick Avenue. And there was different accounts, because Mrs. McLean herself had said that she saw Evelyn and was trying to get her to get the car out of there. There was a boarder who we really haven't heard very much from. And luckily I have got some insight into the boarder, a chap called Robert or Bob Corbett. He also saw from the back bedroom somebody trying to park the car in, thought he could figure out a way to get the car in, even though he wasn't a driver himself, went down and spoke to Mrs. McLean, and she said no, shushed him back inside the house, told him to take little Heather inside and watch the supper that was cooking on the stove. So that's an account which really wasn't covered much in the previous books, so I want to go into that. Also, incredibly lucky to have spoken to his daughter, who has her own insights into that, of what she recalls her father talking about, and his account of what may have been going on in that household. 32 Carrick Avenue, which was the house that Evelyn had bought after marrying John.
Sure. Are there any books that you really like that, while we're waiting for your book to come out possibly in the fall, that people should consider reading?
Sure. I'm going to give you a couple of, there's one book called The Forest City Killer by Vanessa Brown. This is about London, Ontario. London, Ontario, which is one of the places where Evelyn may have shown up, but there were a series of murders there. Incredibly well written. She's a wonderful, wonderful writer and a great inspiration for me. And also another one by Barb Dorrington, another writer who I'm familiar with, called Trauma Monster, which is really the effects of what happens to the family members of people who A, go missing, or B, are found murdered, and who have all these unanswered questions, and how it can really shape and form and cause a ripple effect of trauma in families. A very important story. So Trauma Monster and The Forest City Killer, I highly recommend.
Very nice. Rich?
Well, thank you very much. Those are interesting. This whole thing has been really fascinating for me. And Sarah's going to email or send some materials to you that you could add to our podcast. And we really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward in particular to when this book comes out.
Yes.
And it'll be how many years in October?
Ooh, that I think Sarah might have. It was.
Yeah, so it'll be 80 years.
Yeah.
80 years.
There we
80 years, yeah. So, and it's incredible when you think how quickly time passes. Like that's something, Seth, you may not like understand, like, because you're still fresh and young, but like I really found, oh my goodness, time just dashes past. So my website is evelyndick1946.com, and from there you can sign up and to get book updates, to know when it is out and about. I also have my Facebook group, the Evelyn Dick Files. I think I'm on it 945 members right now. I'd love to see it get to over 1,000. What with doing this podcast.
Let's hope that everybody joins it. I certainly, I'm not sure if I joined it, but I will if I haven't, and I'll be publishing this podcast in there for everybody to check it out. I have one final question. Was Evelyn as evil as she was beautiful?
Evelyn as evil as she was beautiful. This sounds like the headline.
Yes, exactly.
Put it in the tabloid.
Title of the video.
Was Evelyn as evil as she was? No, she was not. Some would argue she wasn't particularly beautiful, but who really cares? She was certainly very photogenic.
Yes.
And I think she would have been a real character. She pushed people away, with her over excessiveness, and I think she was very hard to get to know. But evil, I don't think she was evil. In fact, throughout her time when she was at the Barton Street jail, here's a little tidbit for you. So she was held there for 2 years while the trials were on. She was described as a model prisoner, and the only thing that she ever did that was out of hand was she lobbed her hairbrush at somebody when they were saying something that she didn't like very much. So that was the only I love that story. So,
is there any fun fact you want to share about Evelyn?
I think I've really kind of covered the main things, but I think the main thing is that I found her story surprising. There are certainly people who will disagree with me, and that's fine. And I think there's going to be much more information to come out over the anniversary period. I'm sure a lot of people are doing things. There's a wonderful gentleman, Douglas Roger, who's a playwright, who wrote the story, who wrote the play, How Could You, Mrs. Dick? He has extensive research from when he was researching the play, including audio interviews of some of these fine people who were the detectives and things who were involved. And so I'm hoping that he will make something with that, and we'll learn more. It's a really wonderful, wonderful thing to be a part of. I encourage everybody to dig into a story, to go to archives and touch and feel these different pieces of paper that have existed for so long and tell so many stories, because we have the time now to look at it. We look at things critically, which is exactly what you guys are doing with this podcast. You're discussing it. And that's why you have a following, because people are interested in the nitty gritty. And I love it. Thank you.
Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time out of your morning and afternoon or morning at least for us, to Zoom in and talk about this case with us. And I cannot wait for your book to come out. I will absolutely be in touch when it does. And I would love to have you back on again. And if there's any other cases that you are interested in, whether it's Canada or US or England or Australia, always feel free to reach out and say, hey, I might have some fun information about this case that we could share. And I'd be so happy to have you back on. Rich, what do we have coming up in the next couple of weeks?
Well, it's our schedule is expanding, and we're awful busy. And we've been talking about some of these things now for a couple of weeks, back through the storms that we had, and in the schedule that we have will be our next episode, which will be filmed next Saturday, which will be shown in 2 weeks, is going to be with Ed Epperly and with the Alaska axe murders.
I have the book right here for anybody that wants to follow along. The book link will be in the description, and you could purchase it and follow along with the channel. Check out the book. Pretty good so far. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I know some of our listeners have already purchased it and are following along. What's next?
After that is going to be Jeff Kelly and the 13 Perfect Fugitives, which I just finished this week. And
I'm about 80% done with it. I'm almost done. It's an amazing read so far. It's very, very detailed. 22-year FBI special agent on the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist, and 30-year FBI agent.
If you're curious to who those 13 Perfect Fugitives are, my belief is that he's referring to the 13 missing pieces that were stolen from the Isabel Gardner Museum.
He releases the FBI suspects inside this book, and it's really interesting, and it sheds another light on our interview with Anthony Amore on the case as well, and their relationship together. What's after that?
After that, we're going to have Deviant.
Deviant, right here.
Which I read, and it is a creepy story.
Deviant is on Ed Gein or Ed Gein, however you would like to pronounce it. And our good friend, Harold Schechter, is coming onto the show, and he's going to zoom in with us and talk about the original Psycho.
And then we have a recent new addition to our schedule, and that would be Zodiactually.
Zodiactually is the real story of the fake serial killer on the Zodiac murders. I have not read this yet, but I just got it in the mail. And I'll tell you right now, this is the first time I'm working with the publishing company, Feral House, but they've done an amazing job at setting up this interview. So shout to the publishing agents.
And Eddie McNamara is the author of that one. He is a former police officer, and that should be an interesting case.
And we also one more book here.
Yes,
I think it's at the bottom of the schedule.
It is. It's going to be. We're going to be videoing that in early April, and it is Captain's Dinner Shipwreck, and the subtitle is An Act of Cannibalism.
A shipwreck, an act of cannibalism, and a murder trial that changed legal history by Adam Cohen. This is a crazy case, happened in the 1800s, 1884, May 19th, 1884. I'm really excited to dive on into this book. I have not started it yet because we're going through a book a week at this point. So we have a lot of research that we got to get done. We are booksmaxing these upcoming 2 months. So I'm really excited to see what we can uncover.
And for those people who have been patiently waiting for the Missy Beavis case, I touched base with Adam yesterday, and we're going to get that rolling. He had some situations that were beyond his control, and he and I chatted yesterday, and we're going to be doing that in April, which is really kind of appropriate because we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of that unsolved case.
Absolutely. All of these book links will be in the description below. So if you guys want to follow with the channel, some of them have yet to be released, but for the ones that are already out, please feel free to follow the channel, purchase the book, read with us, learn about these cases, and we will try to uncover just a little bit more information, try to push the ball downfield to get these cases solved. And with that, I think that's going to wrap up this episode.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Sarah for being with us today.
Thank you, Sarah. We really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap up the podcast this week. Tune in next week, and we will see you guys soon. Bye, guys.
Take care.